They said a man can hide his sins, but when Thomas Reddington died, his sins refused to stay buried. Night fell heavy over the Reddington plantation, a place built on whispers, built on secrets, built on a name that no one dared speak aloud after dark: Thomas Reddington. Plantation master, feared by his workers, respected by the town, but loved by no one. Except the one person he was never supposed to love. Her name was Samuel Lean, a slave. Quiet, unbroken, carrying a fire behind her silence that Thomas could never tame. And his wife, Eleanor, she lived in the big house with diamonds on her neck and emptiness in her eyes. She knew something was wrong. She felt that every night Thomas didn't come home. She heard it in the way he said her name, cold, flat, as if she were a shadow, not a wife. People said the Reddington marriage was cursed. People said Thomas had changed. People saw that he was leaving the slave quarters at dawn. People said too much, but no one said it to Eleanor. Then came the night that changed everything. A scream cut through the fields, sharp, violent, a sound that made even the crickets go silent. Workers rushed out with torches. The overseer stormed toward the barn, but Samuel Lean stood there first, breathing hard, eyes wide, hands trembling. Inside the barn, Thomas Reddington lay collapsed on the hay, face pale, lips blue, dead before anyone touched him. The plantation froze. No one dared speak. No one dared accuse. No one dared move. And Eleanor? She arrived last, silk gown dragging through the dirt, her face unreadable, her voice steady as stone. "What happened here?" she asked. But the real question, the one no one dared to whisper, was this: why was Samuel Lean standing over her master's body? And why, in the hours that followed, did lawyers begin arriving at the plantation before his corpse was even cold? Because Thomas Reddington didn't just die with secrets, he died with a will that would burn the entire South to the ground. If you're hooked already, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss next. When a rich man dies, people expect grief. But at the Reddington plantation, they expected a storm. The morning after Thomas Reddington's death felt wrong. Too still, too quiet, like the land itself was waiting for a verdict. Eleanor sat in the parlor, hands folded, jaw tight. She wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't even pretending to mourn. She just stared at the lawyers lined up in front of her, like they were strangers who'd stepped into her nightmare. But they weren't strangers. They were Thomas's men. Men who only came when summoned. Men who carried envelopes thicker than Bibles. Men who smelled like secrets. The head lawyer, Mr. Stanton, cleared his throat. "We must proceed," he said softly. "It was your husband's instruction." Eleanor nodded once, a gesture made of ice. Samueline was brought inside too, escorted, watched, eyes pinned to her every move, as if she were a loaded gun no one dared touch. She stood in the corner, silent, hands clasped, face unreadable. but her presence burned through the room like a truth no one wanted to face. Mr. Stanton opened the will. The sound of paper sliding free felt louder than a scream. Eleanor straightened. Samueline didn't blink. The entire household, servants, workers, overseers, crowded the doorway, holding their breath. And then Stanton began reading. In the event of my death. A pause. A heavy one. The kind that rewrites lives. In the event of my death, I leave the Reddington estate, including all land, livestock, and holdings, to... Eleanor leaned forward. The room tightened. Even the air trembled. To Samueline. A gasp tore through the crowd. Someone dropped a tray. Someone cursed under their breath. Someone whispered, "Impossible." Eleanor's face didn't move. Not an inch. Not a flicker. But her hands, they curled into fists. Samueline swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with shock. Not triumph. Not greed. Just shock. Pure, raw, terrified shock. Stanton continued reading, voice shaking. To my wife, Eleanor Reddington, I leave nothing. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Dangerous. No one breathed. No one spoke. No one could believe what they'd heard. And then all eyes turned to Eleanor, the woman stripped of everything in front of the entire plantation. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just whispered 4 words that sent a chill through the room. This isn't over yet. Want to know what Eleanor does next? Like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss next. A woman who loses everything doesn't break. She hunts. Eleanor Reddington walked out of the parlor in silence. Not a tear, not a tremble, not a single sign of the storm twisting inside her. People stepped away from her path. No one dare speak. No one dare meet her eyes, because everyone knew this simple truth. A betrayed woman is dangerous, but a humiliated woman is fatal. She went straight to Thomas's study. The door slammed behind her. Books rattled. Windows shook. Even the workers outside froze mid-stride. Inside, she tore open drawers, pulled down ledgers, ripped through cabinets. She wasn't looking for proof. She wasn't looking for closure. She was looking for motive. And motive always hides where love does. On the second drawer she found it, a small wooden box, locked, heavy, carved with initials not hers, T.R., and beneath it, S.R. Samueline Reddington? No, it couldn't be. It shouldn't be. It must not be. Eleanor smashed the lock with a candlestick. The lid popped open. Inside were letters, dozens, bound with a ribbon Samueline herself had made in the sewing room. Letters in Thomas's handwriting, letters he had signed with tenderness Eleanor had never received. My dearest Samueline. Eleanor's heartbeat stopped, then restarted violently. She read more. Her jaw clenched harder. Her nails dug into paper. Every word felt like a knife. You are the only one who understands me. You are my peace. You are my future. I will rewrite everything for you. I will be the man you deserve. Eleanor dropped the letters on the desk. They scattered across the floor like fallen feathers. For the first time since Thomas died, her eyes filled, not with sorrow, but with a fire that could burn the walls down. Outside, the plantation watched the big house windows glow. A figure pacing, a figure plotting, a figure reborn. Meanwhile, Samulin sat alone on the back steps, hands shaking, mind racing, wondering how a dead man could still ruin her life. Because she knew this truth better than anyone, Thomas's will didn't just give her everything, it painted a target on her back. And Eleanor Reddington was already aiming. If you're ready for the fallout, like, share, comment, and subscribe for next. Some battles begin with guns. This one began with a stare. The sun dipped low over the Reddington fields, casting long shadows that stretched like warnings. Workers whispered. Overseers watched. Everyone sensed it. War was coming. Not with armies, but with two women. One with power she never wanted, and one with power she refused to lose. Samueline stood outside the slave quarters, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of a world turned upside down. She never asked for land. She never asked for titles. She never asked for a dead man's fortune. She only wanted freedom. But freedom never came clean. Not here, not on this soil. Footsteps approached, slow, steady, chilling. Eleanor Reddington. She didn't wear diamonds now. No pearls, no silk, just a black dress that matched the look in her eyes. The workers stepped back, forming a circle without a word. They knew better than to be in the crossfire. Eleanor stopped inches from Samueline, close enough to smell the fear, close enough to strike. "You think you've won something?" Eleanor asked. Her voice was soft, too soft, the kind of softness that cuts deeper than screams. Samueline shook her head. "I didn't ask for any of this." Eleanor's lips curled. "That's the problem. My husband gave you everything I deserved for doing nothing." Silence. Sharp, dangerous. Samueline swallowed. "I didn't want him. I didn't want his name. I didn't want his will." "But you took them," Eleanor whispered. "You stood there while he humiliated me from the grave." Samueline looked away. Her voice cracked. "He forced himself into my life, into my space. I didn't choose it. I never chose him." Eleanor's jaw tightened. For one tiny moment, one heartbeat, pain flickered across her eyes. Not anger, not hatred. Pain. Then it vanished. "Whatever happened between you and Thomas," she said slowly, "I'll uncover it. Every letter, every secret, every lie." Samueline stepped back. Eleanor stepped forward. The air crackled between them. "And when I do," she continued, "I will take back everything he stole from me." Her eyes narrowed. "And everything he gave to you." Samueline felt her chest tighten. She wasn't fighting a widow. She was facing a woman reborn in vengeance. And somewhere inside the big house, a new set of footsteps began echoing. Someone else had arrived. Someone neither of them expected. Someone carrying a truth darker than the will. If you want to know who just arrived at the plantation, like, share, comment, and subscribe for next. Some arrivals bring hope. This one brought fear. The air shifted before anyone heard the carriage. A cold wind rolled across the fields, sweeping dust, bending grass, warning everyone that the next chapter of this nightmare had just stepped onto Reddington soil. Samueline and Eleanor both turned toward the long dirt road. A black carriage crept forward, wheels groaning, Horses restless like they sensed something unholy inside. Workers paused their chores. Overseers stiffened. Even the children fell silent. Because no one visited the Reddington plantation after sundown unless they carried a purpose. The carriage stopped. The door opened. A tall man stepped out, coat long, boots polished, eyes sharp enough to cut bone. Eleanor's face paled. "Jonathan Hale," she whispered. Samueline didn't know the name, but she knew the look of a man who didn't come for sympathy, he came for answers. Jonathan tipped his hat slightly. "Eleanor, my condolences for your loss." His voice was smooth, too smooth, like a blade freshly sharpened. Eleanor straightened herself. "What are you doing here?" He gave a thin smile. "Your husband owed me a great deal, and debts don't die just because the debtor does." Samueline felt a chill crawl up her spine. Jonathan's eyes moved to her, slowly, methodically, studying her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. "And you must be Samueline," he said, "owner of the Reddington estate." Whispers erupted behind them. Samueline stiffened. Eleanor's jaw clenched. Jonathan walked closer, too close. He murmured, "Funny thing, Thomas never mentioned you." His gaze locked onto hers, cold and unblinking. But men like him rarely reveal what they treasure most. Samueline stepped back. "What do you want?" Jonathan smiled again, a smile that held no warmth. "I've come to collect what's mine. And unfortunately for you, Thomas used this plantation as collateral." Eleanor's breath hitched. "You're lying." Jonathan shook his head. "I have documents, signatures, dates. Thomas promised me 50% of everything if he failed to repay his loans." He let the words sink in. "And now," he said softly, "I intend to claim every acre." The crowd murmured. Fear spread like wildfire. Samueline's voice cracked. "But the will—" Jonathan cut her off. "The will means nothing if the land is already promised elsewhere." Eleanor looked at Samueline. For the first time, she didn't see a rival. She saw another victim caught in Thomas's web of secrets. Jonathan Hale stepped aside, gesturing to the house. "Shall we discuss your future?" he asked. But Samueline knew the truth. Jonathan Hale wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to take everything. If you're ready for the next twist, like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss next. When a wolf enters a dying house, he doesn't hunt. He claims. Jonathan Hale walked into the big house as if he'd been born inside it. No permission, no hesitation, just quiet entitlement that made every worker step aside. Samueline followed slowly, heart pounding in her chest. Eleanor walked beside her, not as an ally, but as a woman who suddenly had something bigger to fear than a rival with an inheritance. Inside the parlor, Jonathan tossed his gloves onto the table. "Sit," he said. Neither woman moved. He smirked. "Thomas hated being challenged. I see he left that trait behind." Samueline's hands trembled. "You said he used this land as collateral. Why? For what?" Jonathan opened his briefcase. Papers, contracts, signatures, all stamped with Thomas's name. "Your beloved master," Jonathan said, "had a taste for gambling and a talent for losing." Eleanor's breath caught. "That's impossible. Thomas never gambled." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. You think you knew him? This man had debts stretching from New Orleans to Charleston. He borrowed from men worse than me. Samueline's stomach twisted. Thomas's letters, full of passion, promises, obsession, suddenly felt more like the ramblings of a desperate man trying to outrun his own ruin. Jonathan leaned back in the chair. By law, half of this estate is mine, but I'm a reasonable man. His eyes glinted with something cruel. I'll take 70%. Eleanor snapped. That's not reason, that's theft. Jonathan stood. Your husband stole from me first. I'm simply correcting the imbalance. He stepped toward Samueline next. Too close. Predatory. You inherited his wealth, and with it, his debts. All of them. Samueline shook her head, voice cracking. I can't give you what I don't have. Jonathan smiled. You misunderstand. I don't want your money. He tilted her chin up with one finger. I want control. Eleanor lunged forward, slapping his hand away. Touch her again, and I'll... Jonathan's eyes went dark. You'll what, Eleanor? You have nothing. No marriage, no fortune, no power. He stepped back and adjusted his coat. You both have until tomorrow at sunset to sign over the land. Refuse, and the men I owe will come instead. He tipped his hat, smirking. And trust me, they make me look merciful. Jonathan Hale walked out of the house, leaving a silence so heavy it could crush bone. Samueline collapsed onto the sofa, breath shaking. We're going to lose everything. Eleanor stared at the doorway Jonathan had exited through. Her voice was barely a whisper. No, she said. We are not losing anything. She looked at Samueline with fierce, burning eyes. Thomas ruined both our lives, but we're going to end this. A beat. We're going to end him. Samueline frowned. He's already dead. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice low and lethal. I wasn't talking about Thomas. If you want to see the war these women are about to start, like, share, comment, and subscribe for next. Two women who hate each other can still unite when a monster walks through their door. Night swallowed the plantation whole. No moon, no breeze, just darkness thick enough to choke on. Samueline paced the parlor, hands shaking. Eleanor stood by the window like a statue carved from ice. Neither spoke, but both knew the truth. Jonathan Hale wasn't just a problem, he was a countdown. Tomorrow at sunset, Samueline whispered. That's all the time we have. Eleanor didn't turn around. We're not giving him the land. Samueline swallowed hard. Then what are we doing? Eleanor finally looked at her, and for the first time, Samueline didn't see hatred in her eyes. She saw calculation, determination, survival. We're finding leverage, Eleanor said. Jonathan Hale has power because he has proof. Contracts, loans, signatures. She paused. But if those signatures are forged... Samueline's breath caught. You think Thomas didn't sign them? Eleanor walked toward Thomas's desk, opened the drawer, pulled out a folder of papers, handwritten letters, receipts, notes in Thomas's sharp, elegant script. Thomas wrote everything, she said. He kept records of every deal he made. If Jonathan forged those contracts, Thomas would have mentioned it somewhere. Samueline stepped closer. So we go through all of this? Eleanor nodded. Tonight. They spread the papers across the table. Ink stained their fingertips. Candle wax dripped onto the wood. Hours passed. Letter after letter. Page after page. Debt lists, land agreements, supply orders, personal notes, but nothing mentioning Jonathan Hale. Not a single transaction, not a single loan, not a single debt. That's when Samueline froze. Eleanor, she whispered, look at this. A document, old, fragile, edges burned like someone tried to destroy it. Eleanor leaned in. It wasn't a contract, it was a confession. Thomas's handwriting, shaky, uneven, unlike anything else he'd written. J.H. threatened me again. Says he'll expose what happened in the barn. Says he has evidence. Eleanor's pulse stopped. What happened in the barn? She whispered. Samueline felt her chest tighten. Her voice dropped to a trembling murmur. That's where he died. Eleanor's eyes widened. Another line in Thomas's writing. If he speaks, she will hang. I have to protect her, even from my wife. Eleanor staggered back. Protect who? Protect her from what? Her skin went cold, but the last sentence made her blood turn to ice. Jonathan Hale knows the truth. I must keep him silent at any cost. Samueline covered her mouth. Eleanor grabbed the table for balance. Jonathan Hale wasn't just after land. He was hiding something. Something Thomas had been terrified of. Something that could destroy Samueline and Eleanor. Eleanor whispered the words neither wanted to say. We're not fighting for land anymore. Her voice trembled. We're fighting for our lives. If you want to see the secret behind Thomas's death, like, share, comment, and subscribe for next. The truth doesn't whisper. It waits, then strikes. The candles burned low, casting trembling shadows across Thomas's confession. Samueline stood frozen. Eleanor's breath came in sharp, uneven waves. Both women stared at the letter. The only thing in the house more dangerous than Jonathan Hale. Eleanor broke the silence first. What happened in that barn, Samueline? Samueline's throat tightened. Her hands shook. Not from guilt, but from the memory she had spent months burying. That night, she whispered, I wasn't alone with him. Eleanor's eyes snapped to her. Who was there? Samueline stepped back, as if the air itself had claws. Thomas was drunk, angrier than usual. He dragged me into the barn, said I belonged to him, said he'd never let me go. Eleanor's jaw clenched. She didn't defend him. She didn't deny it. She knew what kind of man Thomas could be. Samueline continued, voice cracking. He grabbed me. I fought him. For the first time, I fought back. The room held its breath. Even the candles flickered still. She whispered, he hit his head. On the wagon wheel. He collapsed. He wasn't moving. Eleanor inhaled sharply. Samueline, did you kill him? Tears filled Samueline's eyes. I don't know. I don't remember anything after he fell. I ran. I panicked. When I came back, people were already gathered. Someone screamed. Someone said he was dead. Eleanor looked down at the confession again. Jonathan's name. The threat. The fear. Jonathan Hale was there that night, Eleanor murmured. He saw something, or thinks he did. That's why he's blackmailing Thomas in this letter. Samueline covered her mouth. Eleanor, if he tells the authorities, you'll hang, Eleanor said quietly, and I will lose the only chance I have to reclaim my life. For a moment, they just stood there. Two women, no longer enemies, just survivors, trapped in the same burning room. Then, a noise. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Eleanor's eyes snapped to the door. Samueline's breath hitched. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Listening. Eleanor whispered, "Someone's outside." Samueline blew out the candles. Darkness swallowed the room. Another step. Closer. Breathing. Watching. Eleanor moved silently to the desk drawer. She pulled out a small pistol, Thomas's pistol, hand steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. The footsteps retreated, fast, then vanished. Samueline leaned against the wall, trembling. Someone knows we found the letter. Eleanor locked the drawer. No, someone was waiting for us to find it. She turned toward the window. The yard outside was empty. Too empty. Jonathan isn't acting alone, Eleanor said softly, her voice low and cold. There's someone else on this plantation working with Jonathan. Samueline swallowed hard. Who? Eleanor looked at the dark hallway, and in her eyes, a spark of terror finally appeared. The one person Thomas trusted most. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones who stand closest. The hallway was silent, still, too still, like whoever stood there moments ago had melted into the walls. Eleanor gripped Thomas's pistol, her breath sharp, controlled, deadly. Samueline whispered, "You said Thomas trusted someone. Who?" Eleanor didn't answer at first. She walked toward the hallway, her steps slow, listening for any movement, any breath, any sign of the shadow that had eavesdropped. The house answered with silence. Finally, Eleanor spoke. Thomas trusted only one man, she said. His overseer, Carlton Briggs. Samueline stiffened. Carlton, the man who watched everything, the man who knew every secret, the man who walked the plantation at night like he owned the dark. He was there the night Thomas died, Samueline whispered. He said he found the body. Eleanor nodded. And now we know why. They moved toward the kitchen, the only room with light still burning. As they entered, they saw him, Carlton Briggs, sitting at the table, drinking from a tin cup, waiting. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look scared. He just smirked. "Took you long enough," he said. Samueline froze. Eleanor tightened her grip on the pistol. Carlton leaned back casually. "Jonathan said you'd start digging. Said you'd find that little letter, eventually." Eleanor stepped forward. "What do you know about Thomas's death?" Carlton shrugged, enough to make you both very nervous. Samueline's voice trembled. "Did Jonathan tell you to spy on us?" Carlton laughed. "Jonathan? No. I've been informing him for months. Thomas borrowed money from the wrong men, and I made sure those men always knew where he was, what he was doing, and who he was doing it with." Eleanor's jaw clenched. "You helped Jonathan blackmail my husband." Carlton smirked. "Thomas was easy money. Weak men usually are." Samueline swallowed hard. "What happened in the barn that night?" Carlton's eyes flashed, amusement mixed with cruelty. "Oh, that night," he said slowly. "I saw everything." He stood, big, broad, dangerous. "No one believed your story, Samueline. You think a woman like you, killing a man like him, would go unnoticed?" Samueline backed up. Eleanor stepped between them instinctively. Carlton leaned in close. "Thomas didn't die from a fall. A beat. He was still breathing when I got there." Samueline's heart stopped. Eleanor froze. Carlton whispered, "And I'm the one who finished the job." Silence crashed through the room. "You killed him?" Eleanor hissed. Carlton shrugged. "He was going to stiff Jonathan, and a dead debtor is easier to handle than a living coward." Samueline's knees buckled. The room tilted. Everything she feared, everything she blamed herself for, was a lie. Carlton smirked. "But don't worry. Jonathan has big plans for this place. And you too? You won't be part of them." He reached into his coat. Eleanor raised the pistol. "Don't move." Carlton paused, then grinned. "You don't have the courage to shoot." Eleanor pulled the hammer back, a sharp, deadly click. Then footsteps thundered outside, fast, rushing toward the door. Jonathan Hale's voice echoed through the yard. "Carlton, they know. Grab the girl and let's go." The kitchen door burst open, and everything exploded at once. If you want to see the explosive confrontation, like, share, comment, and subscribe for next. The final night of the Reddington Plantation would decide who lived, who died, and who inherited the truth. The kitchen erupted in chaos. Jonathan Hale stormed in, face red with fury, Carlton Briggs at his side, dragging a bag that rattled. Eleanor raised Thomas's pistol, steady now, hands sure, eyes cold as steel. Samueline hid behind her, heart hammering, but ready to fight. Jonathan barked orders. "Grab her, now." Carlton lunged forward. Eleanor fired. The shot echoed through the hall. Carlton stumbled, clutching his shoulder, cursing, blood darkening his coat. Jonathan froze, eyes wide, then lunged. Eleanor sidestepped. The pistol cracked again. Another shot. Jonathan dropped, clutching his leg, screaming. Samueline ran forward. She grabbed the documents, the letters, the wills, the proof of every lie. "This is over," she yelled, her voice strong, full of fire. Eleanor kept watch, pistol raised, breathing heavy. "You touch her again," she warned, "and you die." Carlton groaned on the floor. Jonathan's plan crumbled like dry leaves. The power he thought he had vanished in the chaos of two women who refused to be victims. Outside, the plantation workers had seen everything. They rushed in, armed with pitchforks and courage. Carlton and Jonathan were quickly restrained. Eleanor finally lowered the pistol. Samueline dropped the papers onto the table. The truth lay scattered in front of them. Every debt, every secret, every lie exposed. Eleanor looked at Samueline. For the first time, she didn't see a rival. She saw an ally, a survivor, a woman who had endured as much as she had. Samueline nodded slowly. They both knew the plantation wasn't just land, it was their inheritance of survival, their proof that they were stronger than the men who tried to control them. Carlton and Jonathan were taken away by the authorities. The plantation would never be the same, but Eleanor and Samueline, they had reclaimed their power, their lives, their story. Eleanor turned to Samueline, voice soft but fierce. "Thomas tried to control us from beyond the grave. He failed." Samueline smiled, exhausted but free. "We're the ones in control now." The wind swept across the Reddington fields. The sun rose over broken pasts, but over two women stronger than anyone could imagine. The secrets were out. The fortune no longer mattered, because some things are worth more than gold.